Welcome to the future of understanding. This is Neuromind Insights, where we unlock the power of your mind.
Maybe something happened to you 6 months ago, or maybe it was just last night. A message that ended something, a person who walked out, or a phone call that cut your life into a before and an after. On the outside, you handled it. You said the right things. But nobody saw you 3 weeks later, sitting in your car with the engine off, staring at a laptop screen for 5 hours without doing a single thing. You aren't sad, exactly. Something inside you just switched off. You watch someone else take a hit that looks twice as heavy as yours, and they stand back up in a week. A very quiet question starts forming. Why can they carry this and I can't? You might mistake this for weakness, but the truth is, mentally strong people fall just as hard. That shutdown you felt in the parking lot is not a character flaw. It is automatic. It happens in the brain of the toughest person you have ever met exactly the same way it happened in yours. When too much current hits a system, the breaker protects the entire house by forcefully slamming the power off. A house without that mechanism burns down. The trip is supposed to happen. This paralysis is a factory-installed biological default, a safety measure meant to keep your entire system from collapsing under the weight of the hit. In 1967, psychologists Martin Seligman and Stephen Meyer ran an experiment where animals were exposed to a stressor they could not escape. Later, when escape became obvious, the animals didn't even try. They just lay down and took the pain. This was called learned helplessness. For 50 years, the conclusion was that if life beats you enough times, you learn to become passive. It cemented the idea that giving up was a behavior you had to be taught. Then, in 2016, the original researchers published a retraction. 50 years of neuroscience had proven they had the mechanism backwards. Giving up was never learned in the first place. Shutting down is the default. When you face prolonged pain you cannot escape, a structure in the brainstem called the dorsal raphe nucleus floods the system with serotonin. This chemical wave actively suppresses the urge to escape. It is standard equipment in every human being. The thing that actually has to be learned is control. A region behind your forehead called the ventral medial prefrontal cortex detects whether your actions influence what is happening. When it detects control, it reaches down and switches the shutdown off. Your brain comes pre-installed with a collapse mechanism. Strength is not a factory setting. It is the software you have to install yourself through deliberate action. Your control detector learns the same way a muscle learns. It needs reps. It needs repeated experiences of you pushing against something difficult and watching that difficulty actually move. Look at what fills your day: the economy, political news, or an algorithm deciding who sees your work. Every one of these is a genuine stressor, and you have exactly zero control over any of them. You absorb hours of pain you cannot act on. At the same time, we have deleted almost every opportunity to practice control. We don't cook, food arrives. We don't wait, we stream. Anything uncomfortable that we could influence has been replaced by a button. This creates the precise laboratory condition that produces shutdown: high stress that you cannot influence, combined with comfort that requires no effort. Your control detector has no training data, so it never learns to switch the power back on. We have learned a beautiful vocabulary for avoidance. We call it setting boundaries or protecting our peace. But often, these are the very things keeping us in the dark. The first trap is avoidance. Every time you cancel a meeting or skip a difficult conversation because you aren't ready, you run a training session for your brain. You are teaching it that hard things are threats to move away from, rather than objects to move. The second trap is the fairness contract. You get betrayed, and instead of moving, you wait for a verdict. You want reality to admit it made a mistake before you agree to move forward. This hands the keys to your recovery to the person who hurt you. The third trap is identity fusion. There is a mechanical difference between a business failing and being a failure. Fixing a bad month is a project. Fixing who you are feels like a life sentence, so your brain refuses to even attempt the task. The exact things you do to feel safe are the things that remove your capacity to handle pain. Your world quietly shrinks every year because you are shielding yourself from the only stress that could actually make you stronger. You cannot decide not to trip the breaker. The goal is to shorten the distance between the hit and your first controlled action. Speed of reset is the only skill that matters. The first law is finding the smallest controllable lever. Your brain doesn't care about the size of the problem. It only cares that something in the world responded to you. Wash the dishes. Send one email. Walk down the street. These actions feed your prefrontal cortex the evidence it needs to flip the panel back on. You aren't solving your life. You are proving your actions still change things. The second law is to voluntarily choose your stress. In 1981, Salvatore Matti studied 400 managers through a massive corporate upheaval. Those who came through stronger treated the difficulty as a challenge to engage with, rather than a threat to survive. You build this by voluntarily inserting controllable hardship back into your life. Train when it's cold. Finish the course. Sit with boredom. These are the reps that manufacture the training data your brain never got. Engaging with small, difficult tasks keeps the manual reset switch functional for when disaster strikes. You are training the detector to recognize your influence. The third law is flexibility. A rigid mind snaps. Across decades of research, the most resilient people were those who could feel the hit fully when it helped and set it down when it was time. They matched their response to the situation. The fourth law is building what the hit cannot touch. If your identity is one of 5 pillars, losing your job only takes out one wall. The building still stands because your weight is distributed across your family, your standards, and your work outside. There is a price to becoming hard to destabilize. Some will see your calm as cold. When you stop visibly falling apart, people stop checking on you. You become the one who is always fine, often carrying real things alone because nobody noticed the breaker ever tripped. Eventually, your brain accumulates enough evidence to believe a simple sentence. Whatever this is, I have come back from worse. What used to take 9 months to recover from now takes a day. Mental strength is the result of a brain that knows the floor is temporary. You possess the manual override to get back up, and the switch has been under your hand the entire time.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Neuromind Insights for more.